Well, time to talk about Invader Zim again. Now, I've already covered its notable holiday episodes in the past, but what's left? Well, I could tackle the biggest element of the series, its darkness. Invader Zim is infamous for being one of the most disturbing, messed up, dark series to ever be produced by a giant mainstream kids channel. And it's really surprising on how much they got away with. Of course, it's caused no end to the troubles in production, since Nickelodeon and the staff of the show had to constantly fight each other on what they should add. And the network, of course, had to censor as much as they could. I mean, I don't know what they expected hiring the guy who made Johnny the homicidal maniac for a kid show. The flags were there. But despite network interference, they still got away with far more than any kid show should have gotten away with, and it definitely left an effect on its audience, as so many still remember the messed up episodes to this day, or at least were scarred by it. So what the hell? Let's look back on Invader Zim's infamous and darkest episodes and see how they freaked out a generation. Starting out strong with Bad Rubber Piggy. Sounds silly, but it's one of the conceptually darkest episodes. It starts out with Dr. Membrane giving a presentation on the dangers of time travel, and messing with the timeline can potentially cause utter catastrophe and unintended consequences. And then we see Zim doing exactly that. He somehow made a device that swaps particular objects from the present to the past, and seeks to use it to kill Dib in the past. Wow. Yeah, this is by far the most Zim has ever tried to directly take out Dib without any prior provocation. Also, Zim just casually has a freaking time machine? I mean, Zim has insane amounts of resources and devices, but to casually warp time is something else. And he just had the resources he brought from the base. Well, I guess they did establish you could order things, but still. The Urkin Empire has such incredible technology, it's amazing they haven't already conquered the universe, especially with casual access to time travel. And Zim is going to send a death machine to kill a 3-year-old Dib. Jeez. But despite that, the mech he wants to send isn't compatible, but Gur's Rubber Pig is. And it causes 3-year-old Dib to faceplant into a tree and oh god. What's even worse is that this ripples into the present instantly, as Dib is brutally injured and scarred from the incident with new memories. And Zim finds this the perfect plan as he continually goes through Dib's life and replaces important objects to injure him more and more as it brutally maims and breaks his body every time in the future. And this is the real disturbing part of the episode. The concept of Zim going back to the past and maiming and torturing Dib to the present as he can do nothing to stop his body from dying is such an insanely messed up concept and execution. Especially just seeing a little boy get crippled and brutally hurt again and again with no humor to it. It even gives him psychological trauma as well. It reaches a point where a barely alive Dib trudges to Zim's house to plead with him to stop before he kills him. And visually his scarring and maiming makes him look like an actual corpse. It's so hard to look at. This was okayed for a kid's show. And then with one more brutal change that batters his body to actual death.
Clear! Oh, stay with me!
Yes, Zim actually killed Dib, and he thinks nothing of it. This episode is the most sadistic and vicious Zim ever got, and it's hard to really see his usual goofy, incompetent self in this. But as Membrane said, messing with the past has unintended consequences, and since Dib's father is a super genius with infinite resources, he builds an indestructible exosuit to keep him alive. And with the war machine, Dib is not holding back either, and it's going to kill Zim with his bare hands. Zim tries to alter the past more to save himself, but it just makes the suit even stronger as he breaks through his base, and with one pig left, he sends it back to tell himself to never use the machine in the first place. And it works! Things are back to normal. But Zim accidentally replaces his brain with the pig. But he's okay, I guess? I mean, it's not the first time Zim had his brain destroyed and then reversed. But yeah, conceptually and execution, it's insane how messed up this episode was. This may be the most sadistic and bloodthirsty Zim has gotten, and seeing Dib practically dying the entire episode and becoming a walking corpse is so messed up. It's also messed up psychologically. You just can't help but picture yourself in this situation, and how helpless you can be as your childhood, body, and life get destroyed. Hell, apparently Jordan even wanted to kill off Dib in this episode, but Nick refused to let him. Though apparently it was a joke, but with Jordan you never really know. And yeah, I'm just starting this list. It somehow gets worse than this.
And now, Zim, this is for tampering with the past. This is for the pigs.
Bestest Friend. Now, this episode isn't entirely dark, but it does have an insanely messed up moment everyone remembers. Zim is getting suspicions in school that he doesn't have any friends, and he needs to find one. After many tries, he gets a group of rejects and puts them through disturbing trials as tests if they're worthy of being his friend. And a boy named Keith passes with flying colors as Zim accepts him as his best friend. Zim parades him around to prove he's not weird to the other kids to get the heat off himself, though of course Zim wants nothing to do with him after. But Keith still thinks they're genuine friends and tries to do things with him. And then it gets to actual psychotic stalker territory. And yeah, the classic Invader Zim disturbingness starts to amp up here, as Keith somehow seems to teleport to get to Zim. Keith plans to throw him a party as Zim finds out and thinks it's a huge threat to his identity being found out as he formulates a plan to get rid of Keith. Zim gives Keith a particular present and then... What the hell? Yeah, child-friendly eye gouging! With his new robotic eyes, Zim hypnotizes him to think a squirrel is Zim as he goes outside to chase it and fall off a building, and probably into an interdimensional portal to the nightmare world. But the thing is, he was planned to be killed here. But of course, Nick had to censor it. I mean, that would go too far, but the eye gouging is fine. Yeah, what can you say about this? For the most part, this episode is innocent enough until it takes a slight turn for Keith's creepiness, and then just blindsides you with the insanely disturbing imagery. For pretty much everyone, eyes are the most sensitive parts of the body, and they're the most squeamish about it. Here they're just ripped out of their sockets for 6-year-old Timmy to see. Yeah, it's no wonder everyone remembers this scene, and honestly, it still freaks me out to this day. But also, fun fact, Keith was planned to return in a later episode. We would try to make Dib and Zim become friends, and annoy them so much that both work together to try and kill him. Now, in terms of pure and dark disturbing imagery and visuals, nothing really beats the Halloween episode, Halloween of Spooky Doom, which is drenched into its incredible horror atmosphere and tone that I absolutely love. But I already covered it last Halloween, so here's a link to check it out. It actually might have more to it than you'd think. And also in the same line of disturbing imagery and atmosphere, there's the Christmas special, which I also covered, which has a giant evil kaiju Santa. It's the greatest thing ever. But back to full episodes, there's Gur Goes Crazy and stuff, which isn't especially dark, but it's one of the most infamous things involved with it. Zim is dissatisfied with Gur's incompetence and programs him to be in duty mode all the time. But this causes Gur to obsess over the mission to gather intelligence on humanity and risks getting exposed to directly access data seemingly from people's minds. Granted, I doubt there's that much to find, but it's something I guess. And Gur says Zim himself is a threat to the mission and needs to be killed. Gur also said that he hated being Zim's servant, which is pretty messed up if true, considering how much Gur and Zim care about each other. But the climax is super tense and atmospheric, not only with Gur's intimidating and powerful presence trying to kill his master, but also in the atmosphere and tone, and especially music.
Target found.
I don't know how they made Gur of all characters terrifying, but they did it. Also, wow, if the tallest didn't sabotage Gur, he would have killed Zim almost immediately. Another way Zim's dumb luck saves him. But that's just a tense portion of the episode, what's the big deal? Well, does this shot of evil Gur bring something to mind? Yes, it's time to bring up Bloody Gur. An infamous image of Gur with red eyes drenched in blood. From what I've heard at the time, people told me that a scene with Gur covered in blood secretly aired on television, and stuff like it was the reason why Invader Zim was cancelled. I thought this was just some creepypasta BS, like there's no way this was real. It turns out, this very much was. This was an actual, semi-official drawing made by the staff. And does this shot look familiar? Apparently, it was the intention of the staff to have Gur covered in his victim's blood in this shot, but of course Nickelodeon wouldn't allow it. And in spite, the staff hid the image in multiple episodes right under Nick's nose. Though that is up for debate since staff statements said they knew Nick wouldn't allow it in the first place and never bothered to show them. But they still hid them throughout the episodes. And that is absolutely true. In multiple episodes, you can see a flash image of bloody Gur that viewers can easily miss. I just can't believe that this is real and a legit part of the Invader Zim series. This episode is creepy enough as it is with how terrifying Gur is, but the fact that it becomes a very real creepypasta is just something else, man. I just want to talk about some honorable mentions before I go to, well, the one you all know. Balonius Maximus. True, a rather silly episode, but also makes you very squeamish and you're freaked out with body horror. After Dib throws a slab of bologna at Zim, Zim makes a device that slowly turns Dib's flesh into bologna. Dib is freaked out once he finds out how his body is morphing as he demands the cure, but Zim didn't make one. But he injects Zim with the same device, turning his flesh into bologna, as they're forced to work together to find a cure before they entirely become living bologna. And they don't. Yeah, not only is the ending dark, but the episode surprisingly takes the transformation serious and is actual body horror. I mean, it's a direct allusion to The Fly. And yeah, someone who would be sensitive to body horror, this episode is freaky in that uncanny way of someone being fantastical yet realistic. Also, personally, I get freaked out by the idea of a person you can just take a bite out of. I think it's that primal fear of being eaten alive all animals have. And the episode fully acknowledges it since Dib and Zim are threatened with being eaten alive by stray dogs, so yeah, messed up. Though funny how in the comics they lampshade the fact that this somehow gets reversed in the timeline by saying they found a cure off screen. It was surprisingly simple. Must be how they can reference this.
Hey, I helped you when we were transforming into giant balonies. You're making it up!
I don't know what's more messed up, the idea or the thought process that led Jonan to make this. Okay, this one is kinda weird, but it was something that freaked me out as a kid. It's Future Dib, which, yeah, you probably have no idea what I'm saying, but in the episode, Zim tricks Dib by making a robotic duplicate of him, claiming to be from the future to stop Zim from using membranes and devices to destroy the planet. Which Dib 100% should have questioned a little, like, come on, dude.
Wow, I'm boring!
But Zim uses it to lure Dib into a cage with no way out, as he tries to contact Gash to help him by hijacking the robot. But to stop him, Zim sends in a monkey. And yeah, this monkey must hate Dib because the raw rage of it is off the chart. Once he does briefly, it just goes ballistic and starts to attack him. And it doesn't matter anyway since Gaz doesn't care, just use the robot as a slave. Getting into the Florpus, how can you tell me these are the same characters? And so yeah, Dib is stuck in that cage forever with this chimp just endlessly beating him. And I don't know, that kind of freaked me out as a kid in a weird way. It's surprisingly treated seriously, and the monkey mauling Dib isn't played for silly laughs. In fact, you hear him screaming for most of it. Something about being trapped in a small cage with absolutely no way out with a mad chimp is unnerving. And it's so much worse now since I watched Casual Geographic and now I know just how brutal primates are. Like, chimp attacks are no joke. So this is a nightmare situation to be in, and honestly, it could be very real. Like, please tell me I'm not the only one who feels this way. Plague of babies. You want to talk about body horror? This is it. Sim sees that a baby saw his true identity and tries to interrogate it to no avail. But then it's revealed that it and other babies are actually a stranded alien species that perfectly resemble Earth babies who accidentally transport the real human babies in a hospital as they took their place, now forced to take their identities. Now, that would be messed up enough, but when they try to take Zim's base by force to steal his ship, they form the Giganto baby. And goddamn is this messed up! This is some freaking Thing level body horror. The swelling flesh, the muscly sinew, the writhing faces, eyes and mouths, it's absolutely horrifying and disgusting. How did this get a pass? I have no idea. You don't even want to look at the thing, it's so disgusting and freaky. And it's taken seriously as a threat as Zim can't directly beat it, only by making a brainwave to turn all the aliens brain dead and like actual babies. Which, I mean, come on, you can do the same thing by showing them.
Insert scene you don't like.
Instead, it's gross, disturbing, dark, intense, everything you want from Invader Zim's horror. But it's time for what you all came for. The absolute darkest episode of Invader Zim, and maybe one of the most infamous episodes of animation, Dark Harvest. I'm sure most people already know the plot of the episode, but just in case, it starts out with Filler Bunny, a character from Jonan's comic series, before going to a dodgeball game.
My organs!
Chester, get out of here, you're in the wrong Nicktoon.
Chester McBadbat, ace photographer, always gets his shot.
But Div figures out Zim doesn't have human organs and gets an x-ray device as Zim confirms it.
Inferior human organs! Oh, my squeedly spooch!
Note to self, in one of my many sci-fi projects, reference the squealy spooch. But after getting a pigeon on his head, he's told to see the nurse, as Dip points out he'll be found out since he doesn't have human organs. Miss Bitters also forces a Fallout-style explosive collar on Zim that will blow off his head if he tries to leave school, which, you know, is just par for the course of this school. Though meeting with a hall monitor, he gets an idea, and takes out an organ replacer that he just has for some reason, and swaps his liver with the explosive collar. So yeah, this kid's dead. And that's the entire premise of the episode. Zim goes through the entire school and secretly swaps out the other children's organs with random objects. And it's not done with much humor or comedy, it's taken disturbingly seriously. I mean, the episode has jokes of course, but honestly, not too many, and there's barely any real levity. It's treated pretty much like a horror movie with its setup and execution. Dib uses the x-ray scope to find Zim's plan, and it leads to even more gruesome imagery and body horror. Builds genuine suspense as we don't see Zim doing it for most of the episode, as pretty much every other kid in the school gets sickened and mutilated and in constant agony with their organs replaced. Zim confronts Zim in the cafeteria, who's huge and bloated by all the stolen organs he shoved into his body, which just again makes this episode so much more visceral and disgusting. Zim believes that the more organs he has, the more human he is, which is such a gross and alien concept. But Dib brings up that he doesn't have any lungs as Zim escapes, somehow not being noticed, but to be fair, all the other kids are dying. Dib tries to protect the one kid left, but it's not long before Zim sneaks up behind him, and we never see him again. And now the episode goes into pure horror, as Dib is the only child left Zim hasn't taken, and he's on the hunt. The atmosphere and tone of this part cannot be understated, as it's potentially the tensest and darkest moment of the show, as Dib is terrified of where Zim is. Zim at this point is pretty much like a horror movie alien like the Xenomorph or a Predator. And yeah, if Zim in Bad Bad Rubber Piggy was his most sadistic, this is him at his most predatory. And you only hear the sounds of the pigeon cooing to know where he is. He chases after Dib as he flees for his life around the twisted, disgusting halls of the school. Again, it's like an actual horror movie with the visuals, atmosphere, and especially the music. It just goes to show that if Zim really wanted to, he has all the power and will to eliminate Dib at any moment. And just like I said, Dib cannot escape him as he's eventually cornered and gets his lungs stolen. As both are in the nurse's office, Zim's plan fully works as the nurse deems his numerous organs as perfectly healthy, but then freaks out, tricking Dib that his organs are replaced, leading to be labeled as an organ-deprived freak of nature. Just, what is this episode? From its concept to its execution, I am genuinely shocked this got past the network. This episode is legitimately the closest to actual horror the show has gotten, from body horror to atmospheric horror to suspense horror. It lives in infamy and it more than deserves it. But it gets even worse, as this episode was brought up in a legitimate murder trial. I'm not kidding. Viewer discretion is advised, be warned. I won't get into too much of the gruesome details, but a man named Scott Delensky murdered his neighbor on October 15, 2005, with the corpse beaten and disemboweled. His girlfriend testified, among other things, that he was curious on how the human body would function without organs. The episode was cited as a potential inspiration, as he was apparently fascinated with the episode's premise, but the defense said that the comments weren't to be taken seriously. This has been brought up as a potential reason for Invader Zim's cancellation, but in reality the series was cancelled long before this trial. But still, the fact that this episode was brought up in a legitimate murder trial as a possible inciting cause is just unbelievable. I just cannot believe this is real and everything around it. It truly earns its status as the darkest Invader Zim episode, to the point where everything about it feels like it shouldn't exist in reality. From using time travel to brutally kill a kid in the present, eye gouging, covering a character in blood and adding it to multiple episodes, and some of the most disgusting body horror in animation, it's amazing to see what Invader Zim has gotten away with. Like, it seriously pushed the boundaries of what's acceptable for a children's show, and hell, I think a lot of this stuff couldn't fly for most other shows in general. Now you might ask, did they go too far? After all of this, was it wrong for them to go this dark and brutal in a kids network to the point of going behind the network's back? But actually, I'd say no. Okay, I do think adding blood and gore to episodes went too far, even if it's almost impossible to notice, and Dark Harvest could have been a little lighter, but not only is the disgusting and dark nature of Zim crucial to its identity, but it's also good for the viewer overall. The dark, gritty, gruesome nature is what made Zim stand out from every other Nicktoon on the network, and even to practically every other animated show. Its harsh shading and comic book composition, the gruesome and gritty art style and environments, and of course the overly dark themes and plots of the episodes and tone makes it unlike anything seen before on the TV, and gives it such a unique identity that so many people got attached to. Sure, it wasn't a big hit on the network, likely due to its demographic and Nick's mishandling, but the people who saw it do remember it, and it has gotten such an immense following because of it. Without its dark and gritty approach, Invader Zim loses so much of its identity and appeal, but it's also balanced a lot by its goofy humor and characters as well. And I do think having such dark moments and episodes is really important, especially the kids. There's always this allure or charm to shows like this, or Courage the Cowardly Dog, that have really dark and messed up storylines and visuals. You're scared of it, but it's also reinvigorating. It's a new experience and helps to tackle scary stuff even in a small way. I mean, hopefully not in a scarring way, but I feel scaring kids really helps them grow up in a way. To accept being afraid and the scariness of the real world, but then in a way they understand it isn't real and helps them grapple with those emotions. And it's a really important thing to do. As a kid, I knew Invader Zim was super messed up, but I still loved watching it because of that. And all of my Invader Zim videos have focused on the disturbing and dark execution of its visuals and stories, and I still had so much to say, and it made this episode truly memorable and worth talking about. This is potentially my last Invader Zim video, and I'm glad I at least ended it appreciating what it does with its dark atmosphere I talked so much about. Wouldn't have it any other way. Also, tell me below if there's any dark episodes I missed, and which ones freaked you out. I really want to know. But please tell me I'm not the only one who thinks this monkey is terrifying, come on.
Brains, I love 'em, I need 'em. My tummy jumps for joy when I need 'em.
I woke up this morning, right? Got out of bed, I had to go to the bathroom. When I opened the door, guess what I see? A monkey.